Hello everyone and welcome to Sinful Gaming. I hope you're all doing well, I hope you're all staying safe, and most of all, I hope you're all fighting that war against the grey. Today's video we're going to do a little tournament report from the event I went to at my local friendly game store, Dragon's Lair, Salisbury, this past weekend. It was a one-day event and we'll talk more about all of that, what the scenarios were, what the breakdown and the meta was of all of that in our tournament, and how all my games went and the list I ran. So without further ado, let's get cracking on. We'll talk about the tournament first, then my list, and then my games, and my end thoughts and everything on it. It was a ton of fun as always. And so, I guess a little short breakdown of the tournament. It was, as mentioned, at Dragon's Lair Salisbury. We have these events monthly at the shop. If you are a local to Adelaide, South Australia, and especially up the northern suburbs like I am, you can come in and join in any of these. The store regularly runs Path to Glory and other events associated with Warhammer Age of Sigmar, and indeed other games as well. You can find 40k stock there as well, on top of board games, card games, if that's your sort of thing. Check on out to Dragon's Lair Salisbury. Fantastic shop run by Peter and Len and all of their stuff. It's just amazing. Anyway, enough about that. The event, as mentioned, was a one-day event, so we had 3 rounds of 2,000 points. The battle plans we had were Savage Gains up first, which is where you had the 4 objectives. I do enjoy the scenario. It gives a nice little difference to playing and sort of scoring. Feral Foray was next, probably my favourite of the Destroy objective games, and then Tooth and Nail, which is where no reserves are in, and this was really interesting to play against an army in, especially playing with a Signs of the Storm Stormcast army. But let's check out the field and see what we were looking at. And so here was our field from our local one-dayer. We had 14 players rock up. We did have a couple more, but a couple of people unfortunately were COVID close contacts, so chose not to come, and well, that's right. Anyway, with that said, we had 14 people show up, and this was a little bit less diverse than normally we get for our fields. Normally, like, when I write these, it's almost got every army listed in 14. It's got 14 different armies normally, but we had 3 Soulblight Gravelord armies there for the event. Now, I only really got a good look at one of them. I'm pretty sure all 3 lists were running Manfred, but the one that I'll talk about in this video was a Virkos plus Manfred list. I'm not entirely sure on the other 2 completely. 2 Maggotkin of Nurgle armies, one of them with a lot of Plague Bearers, one of them with a lot of Blight Kings. We had 2 Seraphon armies, one of them was Croak and Skinks, and the other one was a Thunder Lizards army. And then we had 2 Stormgust Eternals army. One was my own, and we'll talk about that in just a second. And the other was a bunch of dragons with a unit of 15 Adjudicators. A Flesh Eater Courts army was pretty stock standard, and a Cruel Boys army featuring a couple of units of Bolt Boys, the Big Bird, and a decent sized unit of Gut Rippers. Lumineth Realm Lords army featured 2 Foxes, one being Severeth, a large unit of the Kangaroo Riders, and some Sentinels, Wardens, and another few sort of generic pieces for the Lumineth. A Skaven army, which had some Storm Fiends, and a Sylvaneth army featuring a Warsong Revenant summoning a bunch of trees and doing magic through some spell portals and stuff like that. Bunch of cool. Also, it should mention that a couple of these armies, the Sylvaneth army, along with one of the Seraphon armies, and one of the Soulblight Gravelords from my good friends who run the Beers of Sigmar channel. You should definitely go give them a check out if you like Warhammer Age of Sigmar battle reports. A bunch of fantastic dudes, and you'll get a good look at that Lumineth Realm Lords army, which looks absolutely amazing, as does the Sylvaneth and the Soulblight Gravelords force. But that Lumineth army is quite special. You'll have seen it also on Doom and Darkness at points in time. So, anyway, with that said, let's look at what the final standings were, and then we'll go into my list and my event. And so the final standings, we only had 2 3-0s, and I was pipped to the top spot by the other 3-0 being Seraphon, Adam from the Beers of Sigmar. I came in second with my Stormcast Eternals, and I was absolutely chuffed. It's gone from a 3rd place to now a 2nd place and getting my 3-0. I guess the end result now is I want to get a 3-0 and be the top spot. Soulblight Gravelords came in next. This was the Virkos Manfred list. Skaven Tide were next. Flesh Eater Courts, Lumineth, the other Stormcast Eternals, and then we had the Maggotkin army featuring Blight Kings higher, and the other Soulblight Gravelord armies, Sylvaneth, Maggotkin, Seraphon, and Cruel Boys taking out last place. Cruel Boys, I'm pretty sure, being the only 0-3, unfortunately for them. They did not have a good run of it this event. But let's get into my list. I'm really happy with my 2nd place finish, and we'll go through my list and then my games during the event. And so here we have my list for the event. We were playing Stormcast Eternals and we were Knights Excelsior. This means Paladins are battle line. And also we get the cool rule where we get to pick one of our Paladin units each round. So one of them that has to be outnumbered. So they will, if they are outnumbered, get +1 to hit and wound roll, so it can just make them really, really powerful, because most paladins are 3s and 3s, so this can just really turn them on to make them absolute blenders, especially on particular paladin units. We then went for a grand strategy, hold the line. It's just better than the Stormcast Eternals one, and anyway, we've got no Redeemers, so there's a lot of paladins in this army. That's a lot of wounds to get through. While it's, it's only 23 paladins, that is 69 wounds worth of paladins to get through. So triumph-wise, we went bloodthirsty rerollable charges, really important for the army because everything in it wants to get in combat. And then, going into our army proper, we got a Lord Celestin on Stardrake, who was our general. I went for the Celestin Hammer, command trait Master of Celestial Menagerie, meaning he's -1 to wound in combat. And then we got the Mirror Shield on there as well to protect him from ranged attacks. The mount trait, like the Young Stars, allows him to do a monstrous rampage with a 1-inch range to make someone -1 to hit, which is really nice. And then we've got Lord Imperator in there as well for his command point utility throughout the army. He's just so useful as a model, I think, for the amount of command abilities and stuff that he can do. He's just a really, really, really useful piece to have throughout the force. And also, another little bit of splash range down with Stormcaller Baton as well. And the Guided by Lightning ability really does help with the one unit of Annihilators we're taking in the force. And then we've got our Lord Relictor in there with Translocation, which was incredibly important. Translocation is important to sort of have for a slow-moving force like the Annihilators and all my Paladins anyway, but especially since we've got the scenario Tooth and Nail where we can't use reserves, it's even more important there as well. Now, for Battle Line, we've got a ton of different Paladins in the force. We've got 3 Annihilators, 5 Decimators, 5 Protectors with 1 Starsword Mace in the unit, and 10 Retributors with 2 Starsword Maces in the unit as well. The 10 Retributors being our only reinforced unit. For core battalions, we went with a Redemption Brotherhood. This puts all our units into a 1-drop battalion, and then we've got 3 other drops in our Magnificent Command Entourage Battalion, getting us an additional Holy Command. And for the 2 Holy Commands, we went with Steadfast March, because once again, run and charge on these Paladins. You can drop them on the table and people go, they're only 4-inch movement, and then you roll a run and charge, and you roll a 5, and all of a sudden they're 9 with a charge. They're a lot quicker than you think, and then Unleash Thy Hatred, super, super important to have when you've got Paladins for that extra attack round. And then we came to 1930, so we pretty much were guaranteeing we were getting a triumph every game. I got it every single game. There were people like, I've got 1960, and I'm like, haha! I've got a triumph, not you, at 1930. 1 reinforced unit, no allies, and 100 wounds on the dot is pretty sweet. And as mentioned, in a 4-drop army. This is just a ton of fun. This is all smash. It's a fun army to play, and it is surprisingly good. So let's go chat about my games. And so here we have game 1. I'm sorry for the lack of pictures. I do try and take some and generally forget as I get involved in the game and just enjoying myself. But I was playing Savage Game versus Cruel Boys again and playing my good mate Andrew once again. This is the second one day in a row where we've played each other first round. The last time my Halley Heart army blew him off the table, and this one went a very similar direction. So you can see how deployment was here on the picture. I had my Decimators and my Annihilators off the table. I chose to give him a first turn, knowing he couldn't get his Bolt Boys in range to do his damage turn 1. He moved forward, moved his lines of Hobgrots and stuff like that, and pretty much took all the objectives on his half of the table and in the middle of the board in turn 1. But what I was able to do, because he couldn't outrange my Stardrake, I actually moved my Stardrake up the flank, along with the Retributors, dealt with the Hobgrots on the left-hand side first, meanwhile sending out my Protectors down the middle as well, just sort of holding the top of the objective. And my Stardrake came along and started shooting with its nice big rain of stars at his Bolt Boys in the backline. And this did quite a bit of damage, actually taking one of the units out of commission pretty early with a rear charge from my Annihilators coming in, doing an 11-inch charge, doing a ton of wounds. The Protectors here on turn 2 actually managed to get up and deal a tremendous amount of damage to the big bird, and they ended up killing it. thanks to the Star Drake just coming in, wiping out, getting me the extra victory points and all of that. Meanwhile, my Decimators came in later in the game. They ended up dropping back in my own zone because he did deal with the Protectors and had his left-hand flank come down into the center of the board with his Hobgrots and that. And they tried to steal my home objective, but my Decimators actually came in, ended up dealing with that, with my Star Drake and stuff like that on the turn. And the Decimators leaped across the Temple of the Skulls with a Steadfast Advance and got into his Gut Rippers who had took that far objective over there. And they killed something like 13 of them in a single round of combat with Unleashed Thy Hatred on them in combat. And just all their bonuses for being outnumbered, and just absolutely shredded them. And it was at that point when the Gut Rippers sort of fell. I got a turn after that, and we called it game. A big one here was just the Mirror Shield stopping him being able to target the Star Drake, and the Star Drake having its nice little shooting weapon with its Rain of Stars being able to do some decent damage to the Bolt Boys, and him just never really being able to use those Bolt Boys effectively in any sort of variety. The Star Drake didn't end up, I think, taking a single wound all game. It was just passing saves, and yeah, completely didn't care about anything he was doing. His Swamp Boss and his Big Bird both fell to the Star Drake, as did a lot of other things throughout the game. And Star Drake definitely won this, along with the Decimators making a good charge and getting in there and dealing with his large unit of Gut Rippers before they really could do anything. A big thing for the Gut Rippers was I actually managed to charge my Relictor, who had translocated over there earlier in, taking the objective for me, as he had to sort of retreat and try and help his big monsters deal with the Star Drake. But in the end, he charged it with his 20-man unit of Gut Rippers, and they failed to kill the Relictor in a turn, meaning the turn after I got it, the Relictor stayed there, healed himself up with his prayer, and then the Decimators came in and did the damage and really just hurt the Gut Rippers. Game 2 saw me take on Maggiekin and Nurgle and my good pal Jed, who you see on the channel all the time bringing his Nurgle and Pestilence. So it was a little bit weird. I played Andrew that I played last event, and I played Jed, who I play all the time. So I hadn't had an opponent that I hadn't played in a while at one of my local one days. I mean, it's a local community. I play most of the guys on the regular, but yeah, I hadn't played. I played 2 opponents I played very, very recently. We had Feral Foray, and Jed was, of course, running his Maggiekin of Nurgle with a brand new book. He'd been just won his first game against some Sylvaneth, and so we played Feral Foray. You can see the army sort of line up. Jed got given the first turn, and he pushed his Great Unclean One and those Black Kings forward there and screened them out with his flyers in the front. However, with the lack of thing, I actually managed to get a 6 on my run roll for the Retributors turn 1, and I just went, you know what? Let's just push forward. I got a 6 on the run there to run and charge with my Holy Command. The Protectors moved up as well, and the Star Drake moved up, and I hit him hard turn 1 with the Retributors, and the Star Drake charging into his Great Unclean One and flies. Turn 1, the Protectors going in there a little bit later. But up on that top right-hand flank as well, I dropped down my Decimators and my Annihilators and pretty much took off that Blight King unit in a turn. And then in the center here, his flyers were taken down in one big swing by the Retributors who came in, and I used Unleash Thy Hatred to make sure I could get through and just hit him really, really hard. Took those flyers off turn 1. The Star Drake came in, the Blight King supporting the Great Unclean One. Went in, and the Star Drake, I think, ate 2 of them with his jaws and then killed the rest of them down to a man. I think there was just 1 Black King left on a couple of wounds. And from there, I actually rolled the double into turn 2, and the Retributors and the Star Drake just went ham on that Great Unclean One and took it off the table in a single round of combat. It was not friendly towards that Great Unclean One, and with that, the Protectors came in. He had to bring in his Blight Klings and his Blight Lords on the left-hand flank into the center, and the Protectors just dealt with them. The Decimators and Annihilators had pretty much dealt with his right-hand flank. I think he had 1 fly left by the time he'd killed everything over there, and so this game was pretty cut and dry. A lot of his stuff was dead very, very quickly in this, as the army just sort of hammered home. The Retributors did an obscene amount of damage. I think on their first round of attacks, they got something like 20 mortal wounds through against the Plague Drones, and then did pretty much the same thing against the Great Unclean One. And it was just an overwhelming amount of damage that he really wasn't able to deal with. I rolled really, really hot for them, to be fair. And yeah, they just absolutely mauled the army, and it was a pretty quick victory for the Stormcast Eternals in this battle. And so, game 3, we versed Soulblight Gravelords, and I was playing the Virkos plus Manfred list. So, you can see in his army, he's got Blood Knights and some skeletons up on the top right-hand side. He's got Belladama, the big bad Radakar the Beast, Manfred, Vampire Lord, and Zombie Dragon, some wolves in the center there. Belladama's right behind Manfred, and some more wolves down on his left-hand flank. For me, there was the Retributors in the center, the Protectors on the left-hand flank. I put out there as bait, knowing full well what that Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon could do. And then I had my Annihilators and Decimators up on the right-hand side, and the Star Drake and my other characters were down back here. You can see the Star Drake's base there. Sorry for the terrible picture. But not having any ability to deep strike in this was a little bit, I guess, against Stormcast Eternals. You can see his gravesite markers as well, 3 lined across the board, and he put one on my home objective as well. So, first round, he tooled up his Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon, came down and wiped out the Protectors. That was pretty much that. He did have to use both a lot of damage into them, with both Manfred and the Vlozda having to attack the Protectors to get rid of them. They are not a pushover. And then he gave me the turn, and really, this was the first big mistake of his. He took my bait, and I don't think he expected the damage potential of those Retributors. I used the Holy Command for run and charge on them, and then moved them down with a run and charged into the Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon, and the Retributors removed it in a turn. He'd, at the start of the combat phase, got Manfred out of there, which was good for him, because if he didn't, I was absolutely going to kill him. I would have probably got the Star Drake in there as well, because the Star Drake had charged down and come down into Manfred as well. And another thing, like, talking after the game with Matt, who I was playing in this one, he really did not expect the Star Drake to be as powerful as it was, or the Retributors to come in and just take out that Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon. They, once again, just paid for their absolute worth. They went in and they smashed that Vlozda really, really hard, killing it with wounds to spare, with damage to spare. And so that was my first turn. Meanwhile, the Annihilators and the Decimators sort of moved up onto my objective. He ended up getting the charge in, and he'd brought these wolves and Radakar down the center. The Decimators then got into the wolves and pretty much wiped out this single unit of wolves that he had in the center here by themselves. Meanwhile, they sort of went in. The Annihilators kept getting like 11-inch charges, so doing a ton of mortal wounds on impact. They originally got those skeletons as they'd moved up, and they did like, the Annihilators rolled an 11-inch charge, did 8 mortal wounds on the charge to the skeletons. The zombie Blood Knights, I'll get there with the name eventually, just slowly got whittled down eventually, and it was actually a Star Drake who killed one with Rain of Stars in the last turn of the game. When I got a turn, he gave me the turn. He was sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place. Manfred was down on my home objective. Meanwhile, Radakar and a Blood Knight were alive there, and Belladama was alive at the back of the field, and there was like a single wolf rocking around here. He gave me the turn, and the Star Drake shooting actually managed to kill off a Blood Knight, freeing up my Annihilators to then charge into Radakar, doing enough damage to him with mortal wounds on impact. I think they did another 8 wounds once again. Look, a 3-inch charge all of a sudden turned into an 11, and they really just hammered home with some damage there from the Annihilators. And finally, the Star Drake just sort of ended up charging, taking out Belladama, and it was Manfred left all by his lonesome, and that was game. I managed to get enough points that he just couldn't catch me. Me taking some priorities and winning some important priorities just meant he was never in a position to be able to catch me with the game. And so, final thoughts on how this list went at the event. I was a little bit worried with how this event was going to go. This Paladin list can sort of hit and miss, I guess, at times. I've had some really good games with it. There's the Idoneth Deepkin battle report on the channel that just went up, which is versus this Stormcast Eternals list. So if you'd like to get a look at it, you can. But for me, the big takeaways from this, first of all, Paladins wreck. I hear a lot of people like talk about Decimators and Protectors and Retributors, and for me, that 10 unit of Retributors just absolutely hammers home. They were so good throughout the event. It went into anything, and anything they touched was dead within a turn. They just have so many good value things for them, Retributors. I am just a massive fan of them now. What's really cool too is it's worth remembering something on them like Unleash Thy Hatred is a really cool ability that Paladins get. where they get an extra attack characteristic to all their melee weapons. This works on Star Soul Maces. So getting an extra attack, and all of a sudden 2 Star Soul Maces are doing 4d3 damage on 2-ups for each one. There was a time, and I'm pretty sure it was against a Vampire Lord and a Zombie Dragon, where they went in and they did like 10 mortal wounds to that thing straight away, with the 2 Star Soul Maces going in with an Unleash Thy Hatred, and that was a big reason it just disappeared. The Great Unclean one was very similar. Once again, they just went in and they managed to do, I think, 5 or 6 mortal wounds straight off the bat with 2 Star Soul Maces. So that was just another massive thing for me as well. The next takeaway is the Mirror Shield. I think this is just a huge artifact. So the big thing about the Mirror Shield is it's not that you can't be seen within, or if the unit's not within 9, it's that you can't be picked as a target for a shooting attack unless the attacking unit is within 9 inch. So this is really important for the protection of your Star Drake. With the 5-up ward going now and no longer available from the amulets, I think Mirror Shield is important on any Star Drake on the table. This allowed me to dictate play and allowed me to dictate, with especially the Star Drake having its own range attack, being able to take out lightly armed. There was a Lumineth army there, which I knew was probably going to come to the event, and had I played that, it would have been my Star Drake trying to deal with the Sentinels eventually and whittle them down with his own rain of fire, and them not being able to target him would have been the big thing for the army. I also, throughout the event, the Imperator was just so useful. His ability to give a free command point every turn is just absolutely amazing. He really gave a ton of utility to the whole army. I don't think, like, there's a lot of times I would not take an Imperator in a Stormcast list now. His ability for once per turn to issue a command without a command point being spent is just huge. And Guide the Lightning is good and definitely helps with the Annihilators having a free reroll on their War Scroll. But for me, it's that command point that he gives to an army that it's just so useful. Being able to use it whenever he wants, really strong. They're my 3 biggest takeaways from the list. If you'd like to see some more battle reports with this army on the table, let us know in the comments below. Well, that's the end of the video. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed it, please leave a comment below and let us know what you enjoyed about the video. And don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel and turn those bell notifications on so you don't miss a beat when we upload new stuff to the channel. Lastly, if you'd like to help support the channel in another way, you can do so either by helping support the channel on Patreon or YouTube members. This allows us to continue to make new content for the channel, exploring other game systems outside of Warhammer Age of Sigmar, like we have started to with things like Elder Scrolls: A Call to Arms and Conquest: The Last Argument of Kings and Warhammer 40,000. And it helps us just continue to make more Age of Sigmar content as well. Thank you to, though, everyone who has helped support, and we'd like to give them all a shout out to our patrons. First of all, Christian Weir, James Soren, Greenskins Gaming, AJC, Kenny Lowe, Outer and Shop First, Andrew Bowen, Nathan Fee, The Rising Ape, Cure Dynamic, Agu, Anthony B, Anton Nilsson, JJ Austrian, Average Wargamer, Domir, Mark Harvey, James Cater, and Samuel. And to our YouTube members as well, Green Roots Gaming, Kenton Young, Chris Wallace, Ronya, Vinny Locklorick, The Journey 84, David Ellsworth, Revenar, Wolfric Nick, Broken Chef, Sean Scott, and Diplomat. And a special thank you, of course, to, first of all, Lady Witchfox Art, who does all the amazing artwork for the channel you see here, and to Xmorphic, who does all the awesome background work on our Discord server, keeping that nice and running properly for us all. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Once again, stay safe, stay well, and most of all, keep fighting that war against Grey. Ciao for now.